President Trump, he's got a problem that you're like, no kidding, Rich. But this one we haven't heard of from any prior president. He can't get attorneys to work for him when it comes to the Russia probe. And all of these guys that you see on the screen, they have something in common. They said thanks but no thanks when asked to work for the president. You got some pretty big names here. Ted Olson, he represented George W. Bush and Bush v. Gore in 2000. Olson said working for Trump would be too chaotic for his taste. Robert Bennett, also a solid no. He represented Bill Clinton during the Paula Jones case. This guy, Joseph Geneva, said yes, but the White House pulled the offer, quote, to conflicts of interest. Those conflicts never explained, but I should mention this guy is a regular on Fox News and also not only a regular critic of the FBI, but a major conspiracy theorist. He said the FBI and Justice Department are trying to frame Trump. It's all part of that deep state here. That would have been his lead counsel here in dealing with the FBI. Right now, the core team is really three guys, and these guys were all part of the team, but they've all left, including John Dowd, who was taking lead here and left in small part because DeGeneva and his wife were about to potentially come in. So what gives here? Let's bring in our legal panel. You know these guys. Doug Von Oist, the founding partner of Carson Von Oist, focusing on corporate misconduct. He was also selected by the Legal 500 as one of the most influential trial lawyers in the country.
Take the job.
Yes, I wanted to take it. Jim Kaciris, criminal defense attorney in Manhattan. He sits on the board of directors of the New York Criminal Bar Association, frequently lecturing at the New York Law School and bar associations in both Queens and New York City. He's had some interesting clients, as Mayo Bartlett has as well. He's an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLC and a former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County District Attorney's Office. All right, now just to set the stage here, representing a president, almost regardless of the crime that he or she is accused of, is an attorney and a law firm's dream because of the unprecedented exposure you will get. And even if it's a tough case, if you somehow can get them off, it's a no-lose situation. But nobody wants this. And there are a litany of reasons, but I'm curious, Jimmy, from your end, what do you think's at the top of the list?
Well, the two things are you cannot...
Typical attorney, you can't give me one. Yeah.
No, because they go hand in hand. On the one hand, this is a client you absolutely cannot control. And on the other hand, there's got to be an abiding sense that you're just never going to get the straight story. And the lawyer's job is to advise the client, and that advice comes from the information from the client. So it is too chaotic. But I have to tell you something. These guys are all at the top of their game. They make a boatload of money. They have a ton of clients.
Talk about the attorneys I said to walk away.
So they don't really need that push, so to speak. And this really could be a downer for them as opposed to what you would think would be something tremendously good.
And Doug, I should mention, attorneys don't play politics. There's been so many cases where the defendant is a Republican and the attorney, the next case will be representing a Democrat, whether it's a politician or whether it's a particular issue or whatever else. I mentioned a few of the names that have represented prominent people from both parties. In terms of a client, you don't really care that much about the politics a lot of the time here. So I asked Jimmy the reason. What do you think would concern you more? Is it that you've got a client with a propensity to lie that you can't get him off Twitter? Or is it that you'll never know the story and you'll go about trying to prove the case or negotiate and you don't know really what, in this case, Bob Mueller has in your client because he won't tell you?
Well, I think what Jimmy said is true. These guys are at the top of their game. And if you remember his previous counsel, Dowd, there was an incident where he said he made a statement and he took the heat for a statement that Trump made. He said, oh, it was me. And there's a couple of instances where he was made to sort of look like the fool to protect his client. These guys, they represent people on both sides because they are so good and they're so well respected. If you have to start doing things like that to protect your client, you're not going to be respected by either side eventually.
And Mayo, pivoting off from Dub's point, an attorney is one thing, okay? But a law firm has a whole bunch of roster of clients right now. And some people don't want to be infected by being attached to the law firm that's in the news every day that's representing, let's say in this case, this particular president. But we've had other controversial presidents, Bill Clinton, obviously, during the Starr investigation. They were lining up law firms, let alone attorneys, to be able to represent Bill Clinton, even though there was a very toxic scandal that was going on at the time. Why do you think this one's so different?
Well, one of the other things is that it had been suggested that other law firms were not paid their full legal fees in the past when they represented Mr. Trump. So that might be something that some people consider. But then there is also...
Mayo's saying basically that the president would stiff the law firm and say, you should pay me for having the privilege for working for me. Yeah.
But the other thing that's interesting is that depending on who your clients are, you know, you may lose clients because Mr. Trump, whether you love him or you don't, is a very polarizing figure, more so than most other presidents have been. He's the only president I can recall who goes out of his way basically to criticize previous presidents of his own party and of the Democratic Party. So you have some people who very well may change and go somewhere else if you're in fact representing President Trump.
But that's not usually the norm, because usually if you're a law firm or an attorney in the firm that's representing the President of the States, there's an amazing prestige that gets attached to that. So, you know, you would say, you know what, I may not have voted for the guy here, but they think well enough of this firm here that in the most preeminent, high-profile case in the country, they want them representing. That wasn't the case. We got some funny tweets from people going around here, but it's amazing the amount of folks that we even know about that turned him down, let alone others. Ted also represents Republicans historically.
I think, though, also you have to look at the fact that a lot of people who've been associated with the administration have gone on shows, not unlike this show, and they've made statements which have led to them being subpoenaed to testify before the grand jury or have led to invitations to come before the special prosecutor. So it's not inconceivable that you have a lot of conflicts of interest and that you may be walking into a case that you can't prevail on.
And okay, the shocking part that they can't find somebody to take the gig. But now let's talk about the consequences. To me, first of all, there's church and state in that you have a personal attorney, you have a White House attorney, okay? You can't be this understaffed and handle, I mean, look what Mueller has. He's got 19 killers working for him, basically, that are the top of their game with bank fraud and everything else that's gone on here. The idea, they have to be playing defense, Jimmy, the whole time. They never can get ahead of this investigation. They're responding to whatever shows up in the news.
Well, there's nothing to do now. Wait until the Mueller investigation comes to fruition. Wait until charges are brought. Wait till something happens.
You could have a strategy. If he was your client and you were armed with a fantastic legal team behind you, you could have a strategy that says, okay, we're going to do messaging right now. We're going to get out ahead of some of this. We're going to come up with some argument whatsoever.
Argument against what? If I'm the lawyer, I say to the president...
They could have handled this better since the beginning of this investigation.
Well, but not they, he. Because my advice from the very beginning would be, listen, get on a TV and say, I want Mr. Mueller to conduct his investigation. We'll cooperate with the investigation. I have work to do. I got a guy in North Korea who's building nukes. I got a tax bill I want to pass.
Though, yeah.
I got a bigger button.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of work to do. Let him do his job. And then in the background, he could be sitting with his lawyers, maybe getting his own documents in order, maybe getting his own timeline in order, and so on and so forth, and just have them do their work. There's nothing to do right now.
Well, Doug, I could argue you could have, you know, you could be framing right now the terms if there is going to be an interview with the president and the how and everything else. I'm telling you.
Well, that's something that you do have to do.
That's just
absolutely.
a small part of it, let alone whatever else. It is stunning to me that he can't find somebody to take the job.
You're saying nobody will take the job. That's the smart thing to do. You tell your client less is more, and that's the one thing he won't do. So any client, any attorney who wants to look good and practice his craft, he knows he's not going to do that. So they're eventually going to look bad. And that's the
if
reason
you're not
why
with a
nobody
big
wants to
enough
work
firm, this will shut your practice down also. We've done trials where you had 115 boxes of evidence, and that's to go through, and you have to look through each document in that box. We're talking about terabytes and terabytes of evidence, and this is just from the people who've been charged so far. So you have to meticulously go through all of that for content. So in order to do that, you really need a team that's almost hundreds of people to be able to participate.
Just think about what Mayo's saying, because I've heard it too. It's very conceivable as we sit here tonight that the president's legal team have not gone through all the relevant evidence in preparing their case because they don't have the manpower. All right, we come back. The other huge story, obviously, Stormy Daniels this week and her attorney. They're talking about her case against the president. They're talking a lot. But the president, shockingly, he's staying quiet. No tweets, no comments. We're going to look at the strategies, the case, and also what's at stake.